from the worlds of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar. The December Dump.
Okay. What 3 rings do you need to marry one of Voldefrey's daughters? Or is this too soon?
I don't know.
Wedding ring, suffering, and murdering. Yep. Hello and welcome to our reaction and review of Season 3, Episode 10 of Game of Thrones, that being Mhysa. Mhysa going home. We have a Patreon called patreon.com/Genesis of Androzani, where you can get exclusive access to the full-length reaction for this, also early access to this video, and requesting videos for us to do. We also have a Twitter, and a Discord chat, and a Letterboxd account I also have as well. You can check all those out in the description. But with that said, going into this episode, coming off the Reigns of Castamere, Callum, what are your thoughts?
I generally don't know what's going to happen. I have no clue what's going to happen at all, because as with living off with the last episode, it was pretty much, I would say, the bookend of a lot of the Stark story. And I'm not sure, at least within this episode alone, I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm excited to see what, really, because I feel like now this is like a new chapter, really, I think in the show. Now that this war is kind of done, I feel we're probably going to transition into something new within the show, possibly.
Halfway through the 3rd book.
Yeah.
Well, we've still got 2 more weddings, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
So we have to see what happens and when they're going to be. Alright then, well, if you've got nothing else to say, we should begin episode 10, which is called Mhysa. D&D, man. These were the days for them. Ah, here we go, the traitor.
Hello, you prick.
Oh, I love that. Ooh. Red wedding's still going on.
I think in the Telltale game of Game of Thrones, I think this is where it starts.
Yep, it is.
Because I've seen all of that, and that was pretty much at the time the most I knew about Game of Thrones.
Yep, I've played that. It starts here.
It's not very good.
It's not very expensive.
No.
Oh dear.
Oh no. Oh shit. They take his head off?
They put Grey Wind's head on Rob's body.
Oh my god. No, that's fuck that. That's actually
just saw
really messed me up. Oh.
Speaking of weddings.
I am the disgraced daughter of the traitor Ned Stark.
The disgraced daughter and the demon monkey were perfect for each other.
You cut a little hole in his mattress and you stuff sheep dung inside. Then you sew up the hole and make his bed again. His room will stink, but he won't know where it's coming from.
Lady Sansa, why sheep shift?
That's the vulgar word for dung.
Oh, Patrick.
Oh god. We're here to celebrate.
Oh dear.
Killed a few puppies.
Oh, he's
today.
so happy. Oh, and he's gonna have to fucking... Well, fuck you. He's gonna have to tell Sansa that her whole family's dead.
And just now, kings are dying like flies.
Mm-hmm.
I am the king. I will punish you.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
My father won the real war. He killed Prince Rhaegar. He took the crown while you hid under Castle Rock.
You want to say that a little bit louder?
I'm not tired.
Come.
Literally being treated as if he's a child.
Because he is one.
Mm-hmm. But he's acting as if he's 5, playing king. But he's actually the king.
Not you.
Where have you heard that before?
Yeah, I remember.
You just sent the most powerful man in Westeros to bed without his supper. A treasonous statement. Joffrey is king.
One way or another, you will get that girl pregnant.
Will not rape her.
Shall I explain to you in one easy lesson how the world works?
Use small words. I'm not as bright as you. But solely for the benefit of the family.
The day that you were born, I wanted to carry you into the sea and let the waves wash you away. Instead, I let you live. And I brought you up as my son, because you're a Lannister.
Oh boy.
Sansa.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hodor. Hodor.
Don't, Hodor. Or for serving the king's son in a pie. He killed a guest beneath his roof. That's something the gods can't forgive.
Speaking of,
Mm-hmm. Yep. God, cleaning up their blood.
I'm trying to eat my breakfast, actually.
The Blackfish escaped.
Mmm.
You'll be needing a new young girl.
Yeah. Got that to look forward to. Here's to the young wolf. Oh.
Forever young. They handed him over, trussed and hooded. But Ramsay, well, Ramsay has his own way of doing things.
Yep. Because he's a fucking insane freak.
Do eunuchs have a phantom cock? Next time you think about naked girls, when you feel an itch.
Jesus Christ.
Don't kill
Oh, hi, Sam.
Who are you?
Who's your brother?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, God.
You're John's brother. The one who fell from the window.
No, I'm not.
You are.
I've been round ghost enough to know a direwolf when I see one. And I've heard all about Hodor.
Hodor.
Take us north of the wall.
The one thing he doesn't want.
Well, we haven't been here in a while.
Well, not since, what, season 2?
Back to those shit-stained rocks.
Oh.
On the
come
first night of the full moon.
But no one's killed a White Walker in thousands of years.
Well,
Well, fucking Sam
suppose
dealt
someone
with
had
that.
to be the first.
Take it, Hodor.
It's weird seeing characters now interact with other characters.
Speaking of,
Hey.
So how'd you become a lord?
Oh, that's a long story.
Better not then. I'm a bit busy.
You've been a good influence on our mutual friend, you know. He used to drink from sundown to sunup, visit 3 brothels a night, gamble away his father's money. Now it's just the drinking.
No.
Keep up.
I'll tell you what, though. The hardest thing was getting that wolf's head to stay on the body.
Oh, God.
oh,
Oh, God.
Where did you get the knife?
From you.
Oh, well, yeah.
Next time you're going to do something like that, tell me first.
Not, don't do it. Tell me before you do it. Well, there you go.
all men must die.
That's sexist. Yep, of course.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
I do know some things. I know I love you. I have to go home now.
Oh.
If she wanted to kill him, she would have done it.
Mm-hmm. God, feels like forever we've seen this place.
I know
And him.
how this must look.
Among other things.
Master.
Maester.
And the child. I hope your penmanship is better than your swordplay.
Miles better.
On the first nigget,
Night.
first night of the full moon. Why is there a G in night?
I don't know. There just is.
Daniel's favourite moment from the whole show.
To all the lords and noble men of Westeros.
Noblemen.
Noble men of Westeros. the night watch.
Why are they ringing the bells? Are we
Oh
being
no.
attacked?
Oh no. Not the bells. Anything but the bells.
His name's Gendry.
I love that shot.
He's a good lad. A poor lad from Flea Bottom
Angel
who happens
and the
to
devil.
be your nephew.
What is the life of one bastard boy against a kingdom?
Everything.
The boy must die.
Oh, he's such an underused character, Stannis Baratheon.
Mm-hmm.
Just wish we got more of him.
Aim for that star. Don't stop. There's bread and water. Go slow with it.
This is totally gonna work.
The other way.
Oh.
Hold!
Well, he made it. Oh my god.
Jesus has walked in.
Out of the way.
Then we're going to actually notice.
They don't even recognise him.
He's been away for a long time. And he's got a beard, and he's not as blonde. It's quite funny how Jamie's literally been away for so long, and now he just walks back into King's Landing.
Yeah.
Ah.
Cersei.
Well, I'm gonna need you.
The dead speak.
You need him. He has a part to play in the war to come.
Alright, so you're off the hook.
That was quite a long one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It was mammoth. Yeah, your initial thoughts on Mhysa?
I thought that was great. I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing. I think that's probably, out of the 3 finales for each season, that's probably my favourite one. I think this is the perfect like aftermath of an episode like what we got
The
last
Reigns
time.
of Castamere.
Yeah. I think this is what this level of quality should have been what the last 2 seasons were. While they were very, very good, I think this was exactly what I wanted as an aftermath. Every scene I thoroughly enjoyed.
Well then, good. Yeah, I remember when I first watched this, that ending to me felt very jarring considering how bleak the previous episode was. I was like, that is not what I expected at all.
What an uplifting moment.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit weird, isn't it, to have a moment like that?
It is. But I think what I like about it is because what this world has been so depressing, it's been so bleak, and it's basically been, because of the last episode, we, as far as we know, up until I think that moment for me, pretty much everybody is a villain in my eyes in terms of people who are in command. Like the top, like the king, and then you obviously had like, you got the Boltons, and you've got Greyjoy,
Walder Frey, Stannis Baratheon, Mance Rayder, Daenerys is the other one. Technically.
Well, what I was going to say is that scene for me shows, like, in terms of the story and narrative, she is the light of the people gunning for the throne. That moment, I think, is actually probably one of my favourite moments from Daenerys, because I think what it does for her, like I said, she is the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of her story and the story of Westeros as a whole and the Seven Kingdoms.
So, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's the thing. Knowing what I know about season 8, that ending to that seems so contradictory.
Yep.
Because for me, that is the moment where she becomes the hero of this story in terms of the Iron Throne. At least that's what I feel like.
There's going to be some interesting. There's going to be an interesting moment at a point later down the track when I reference that scene again. Which will be very interesting. Because there is that scene that we just saw links to another one at some point.
Yeah.
So I'll be waiting for you. I'll be waiting for when you pick it up, because there is another scene that links to that one we just saw eventually. So I'll be interested to see if you can find it when it happens.
Yeah. And just like thinking like overall, knowing what I know about season 8, knowing what she does, it annoys me because that's so. They are two complete. It feels like they're two complete different characters. it just confuses me how D&D completely misunderstand what this character was.
I suppose, I mean, without, obviously I've seen the show, so I have my own thoughts, but if we're talking basically on blind knowledge, you'd have to assume that, between seasons 4 and 7, you'd have to imagine that something changes, right, for that to work.
You'd assume so. If they were going to go down that path of changing this character, you'd have to do something that would be the natural progression to that, from this moment to then that in season 8. But do they do that? As
you have to wait and find out.
Yeah, but from what I hear a lot, that isn't the case. And it'll be interesting to see how this character continues to then get to the moment where she is completely assassinated as a character.
Yep.
And it's a real shame, because honestly, that scene is probably like, I think that's the moment for me that I really start to get on board with Daenerys as a character. Because I feel it's that through these first 3 seasons, she has felt so, while her story has been very solid, there always seems to be something missing. There seems to be something that doesn't allow me to really engage with her story and character. While with that, I think that moment represents who she is. And it annoys me, because I really, really enjoyed that scene, and I loved how that hooked the end of the season.
Yes. Oh dearie me.
Yeah.
Right, well, shall we get into the characters then?
Yeah.
Roose Bolton and Walder Frey.
Interesting. Yeah, they had an interesting conversation.
Yes.
Oh god, that when the episode started and the first sort of 5 minutes, I was right back into the ending of
Red
last
Wedding
episode.
Part 2.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. When they brought Rob's body out and his head off, that really
with Greywind's head on his body.
Yep, that really fucked me up. Like, honestly.
Arya saw that.
I just hate, like, not hate, but I think it's a really good moment. But it's like, as like a viewer, I'd hate like thinking of like all the stuff that Rob did, and then to just be chucked out on a horse, head gone, and stuck a wolf's head on it, on the body. It's a total humiliation of Starks.
Yep.
Yeah, it sucks. It's horrible. But yeah, Bolton and Walder Frey's conversation was very interesting. Sort of how they talked about the entire, how everything works.
We found out that the Blackfish escaped, actually.
Yeah, and they didn't really. Well, Walder Frey didn't care because, like you said, he has the backing of
Tywin
Lannister.
We'll get to him. We'll get to Tywin later.
In Westeros. Oh yeah. But yeah. It's weird because I feel like now that Bolton already, because I think before, like we mentioned in the last episode, how well he was slowly but quietly built up. And this episode really feels like he's now become a fully fledged character. Like he's a proper character.
What I love about it is that now that Rob's dead, he literally confesses all the exposition about what he was doing and what he's doing now. Like he just straight up says, "My bastard Ramsay has Theon Greyjoy."
Yeah.
He can actually be honest.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was a really good scene. I really liked it.
Yes. And you would have to imagine that the Blackfish would probably want revenge for that.
What has happened?
I also like the details
Can't be
when
completely
Walder
wiped
Frey
out.
said, you know, they all laugh at me for marrying a young bride, but they weren't so, you know, happy to laugh when Jon Arryn did the same with Lysa.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, you know, as you saw when you saw his corpse, Jon Arryn was much older than Lysa. And he was old when he married her as a young girl.
Yeah.
But because Jon Arryn was like friends with, you know, he was friends with Robert Baratheon and Ned, like everyone respected him.
Yeah.
And also because Jon Arryn wasn't a pervert. He also wasn't doing it to his own daughters.
No.
Yeah. I also really like that
So, yeah.
line from Walder Frey where he's like, he realizes he needs another wife. He's like, got that to look forward to. Yeah, that whole scene where they're just cleaning the blood off the floor, that was bleak. And what I love about it is that Roose Bolton, he's a bit of a sociopath in the sense that, you know, there's all this death and blood around him, yet he is so quiet and just sort of composed about it. He's very gentlemanly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, as if it's like it's his normal business.
Already feels that way with how he's dealt with this whole
Though
situation.
he did crack a bit of a smile, though, Walder Frey, I will say.
Yeah.
And he shall stay young forever. He will be forever young. Yeah. So obviously Roose Bolton is a much more powerful man now that he's been named Warden of the North by Tywin Lannister. He now has the power that Ned had at the start of season 1. And he's in no hurry to take Winterfell. He's taking his time. No. He also is now married to one of Walder Frey's daughters as well, apparently. As a part of a union. Ugh, dear. But yeah, I love that shot of when he walked up to the top of the Twins Tower and he looked on the Twins Tower, Jesus. He went up to the top of the tower and he looked down and you just see that massive array of just death.
Yeah.
Well, I genuinely believe that scene happened right after the Red Wedding. You know, right after the scene we got last episode. I feel like it just, like, right after Catelyn was killed, Roose Bolton probably climbed to the top of the tower. It's crazy how there were so many people that were, like, camping out together and probably, you know, just enjoying themselves and they were being friendly, but they didn't realize that, well, the Stark didn't realize that half of the people in the camp were there to kill them. It's pretty crazy how that secret was kept amongst all those people, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it was in the Game of Thrones Telltale game, that's where it begins.
Yes.
I can't remember what the house was called, actually. You played a family in that game.
It was some beginning with L.
Yeah. It was like a really, like, cheap version of the Stark storyline. Where, like, the sister was in King's Landing under Cersei's hands, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, Roose Bolton and Walder Frey, really good. And going forward now, Roose Bolton has far more power.
Yep.
Then we had Sandor Clegane and Arya Stark.
Yeah.
Arya Stark killing her first man. Out of vengeance.
Yep. I was, talking about how they completely like decimated everybody and killed the direwolf.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
stuck it on Rob's head.
Mm-hmm.
I like how she manipulated him by dropping the Braavosi coin.
Yep.
I want to add in specific detail here for this scene in that the way that the scene is written, you know, in the way that Arya's character is written in the books, in the sense that the murder she commits is morally ambiguous, in the sense that you understand the motivation for her doing it, but there is still that sense of, like, it's not it's the kind of thing where you still kind of questioning whether or not she should be doing that sort of thing, like whether she should have taken the act to revenge or not. If you get what I'm saying, there is a moral ambiguity to her murdering that man. But you can, but obviously you can see why she did it, because she was obviously, her brothers and her mother's just died, and she had to witness seeing his direwolf attached to his head, and she found the person that did it. Which is, I will say, it's a little bit of a coincidence that she managed to run into them, but hey ho. But the moral ambiguity around it is something that I do appreciate in storytelling, which is something that we'll have to discuss at a certain point later, about moral ambiguity. Because it's something that Dave and Dan seem to forget at some point.
Well, they just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah. Right, shall we go to King's Landing?
Yeah.
Sansa Stark.
Her whole life is fucked. She's literally lost everybody now. Like, the only Starks that are alive are her, Arya. Technically Jon is a part of the Stark family. And
Bran and Rickon.
Got Bran and Rickon. And that's pretty much
Rickon's
it.
off screen now.
Yeah. So that's only 5.
Bran's a cripple. Jon's a bastard at the Night's Watch. Almost killed. Sansa's captured and Sansa's captured and basically imprisoned, forced to marry Tyrion. And Arya's like in no man's land.
She's pretty much on the run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Rickon's the only one who could carry on the Stark name.
If you count Theon Greyjoy as a Stark, he's fucked as well.
Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, the Starks are pretty much, in terms of power, they're done.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing left. And even if Rickon were to come of age, it would be years down the line, and he's in danger still now, because they're probably going to try and kill all the Starks just to get rid of them.
Well, Rickon will be going to the Last Hearth, which is housed by the Umbers. But now the North is being controlled by Roose Bolton.
Yeah.
And when Roose Bolton finds out that Rickon Stark is at the Last Hearth, what is he going to do?
I did a finger signal against my neck to signify a slice cut of the throat.
Well, I mean, Rickon's a very valuable asset, so you would imagine Roose Bolton would be like, I'll just have that.
Possibly.
I can sell this boy for something very valuable. But who to? Who the hell would... I mean, Ned and Catelyn are dead. Maester Luwin's dead. Roderick Cassell's dead. Jon Snow's at the Wall. Robb Stark's dead. Sansa's in King's Landing. Arya's on the run. Bran's beyond the wall.
Yeah, there's... The entire Stark family is completely fucked.
Yeah.
They're pretty much remnants at this point.
Yeah. All because Ned went south.
Mm-hmm.
All because Ned couldn't say no to his king. Because he was too honourable. Yeah. Or because he was too nosy and he wanted to know the reason why Jon Arryn was murdered. So in a sense,
yeah,
because the reason why Robert Baratheon asked Ned to be Hand of the King was because Jon Arryn died, So in a sense, whoever caused Jon Arryn to die is the reason why this is all happening.
Yeah. That was the start of the chain of events.
Mm-hmm. However, at the same time, had Ned said no, again, this wouldn't have happened. So there was a conscious decision made by Ned, but it definitely was caused by whoever killed Jon Arryn.
Yeah.
So whoever killed Jon Arryn has caused a lot of blood. A lot of blood.
Oh, yeah, they have for sure.
Mm-hmm. Alright, yeah. Sansa Stark, yeah, that whole scene where Tyrion walks into her room and she just turns around. And because you can just tell she's found out what's happened to her mother and her brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she hasn't seen them since, like, the very beginning of the show.
Mm. And what's crazy is you know that she's just found out because in the scene before that, she was fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, take a wild guess at who told her.
Yep, I wonder why. I can't possibly imagine.
Yeah. We also had a pretty significant scene with Shae and Varys.
Yeah. That was interesting.
She's convinced that Tyrion has convinced Varys to try and talk her out of it. Into going across the Narrow Sea. I think it's probably smart of her to know that, to realize that. Because this isn't the kind of thing that Varys would do. Like, I don't think Varys would give up that many diamonds just to send her across the Narrow Sea. She knows that she knows that could only come from Tyrion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think Varys would do something like that. Though I did really like this scene.
Oh yeah.
And I thought Varys was great in it.
Absolutely. Interesting that Varys is willing to do Tyrion's dirty work for him, though. The thing is, I think Varys does actually... A lot of the things he said, I think he does believe. Like saying that she's a complication. It's just that he doesn't have the power to send her, but now that Tyrion's commanded him to tell her with diamonds, I think he realized that he did have the power to do it then, if that makes sense. So it was Tyrion asking Varys to do it, and then Varys agreed because he thought reason to it, because he cares about Shae and knows that she's in danger if she stays. And now that Tyrion has probably commanded him to do that, you can see how, he would take that opportunity. I think it's a bit of both. But obviously Shae is refusing and she wants to stay. Because she's there to guard Sansa's life and also is not going to leave Tyrion. She won't leave across the Narrow Sea without him. What about Podrick Payne, though?
Oh, God. Yeah, every scene with him is like...
All the girls have heard about him.
Yeah, exactly. And he's drinking with Tyrion. Yeah, he's still going strong.
Being drunk all the time was easy, everyone would do it. It's hard for a reason. We had a few brief moments of Cersei, though. There was that scene she had with Tyrion where she talks about how not even Joffrey can take away the feeling that she had when he was a baby. I think what I love most about that scene is it shows that before Joffrey could learn to speak and, communicate, he was actually a very innocent person. He was just a child. It wasn't until the world fucked him up that he became such a horrible beast of a person. If you know what I mean? So it's very obviously the nurture he's had has had a negative impact on him. And when he was a young child, he was actually, an innocent boy. And it's the way he's been brought up that's caused him to be like this. Which is great. I think they are giving Joffrey one redeemable quality. There you go.
Yeah, in this episode, I think it seems like now she's so like. Whenever she talks to Joffrey or is in a conversation with Joffrey, with anybody else, she's always on edge. It always feels like she's on edge. Because of how Joffrey is, and I think there's a level of fear within her, and rightly so, because it's fucking Joffrey.
We'll get to
the scene with her and the scene with her and Tyrion was very interesting, because like the only thing that's keeping her together is her children, including Joffrey.
Yep.
Because she would have no reason to live in her mind without them.
That's an interesting thing for her to say, considering who came back to King's Landing in this episode.
Yeah, Jaime's back. Just it's like it's so funny how he's been trying to get back to King's Landing now for a season and a half since escaping, and he just
2 seasons, arguably, because he was captured in season 1, episode 9.
Yeah, he's been captured for 2 seasons now, and he's been trying to get back to King's Landing for about a season and a half since escaping. It's been a long time, and he just wasn't recognised by anybody, seen as just a local like straggler. It's him to just walk back into Cersei's room, and then to see like the not really horror, but like shock on Cersei's face, and like the disgust on his, knowing like what's happened to him, is really, really interesting. Yeah. I just like the simplicity of him just walking back after so long, and just if you looked at like the last episode you saw of him before he was kidnapped, and then went to this, and he is completely changed as a person mentally.
I think Cersei recognises that,
and physically.
Oh yes, he's less blonde. He has a beard, and he has no hand.
His good hand.
He's also much slimmer.
Oh yeah, because he's probably hardly eaten for about a year.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah, Jaime's had a very interesting season.
Oh yeah, he has for sure.
Yeah.
Like in this season, he pretty much poured his heart out and was at his lowest he's probably ever been.
Yep.
And it probably has changed him.
With his return to King's Landing, obviously we saw Brienne of Tarth there as well. I like when people just the people just saw him in the streets as a commoner. They didn't recognize him. They're just like, get the fuck out the way. And like Brienne looking at him like she's just like, they don't respect you at all.
Yeah, because first of all, he's been away for over 2 years now, and he is pretty much unrecognizable. So you got those 2 things. It makes sense, like that. If not, someone just didn't look at him like for like quite a while. Yeah, they're not going to recognize that it's Jaime, because he looks like he's been through hell, like most people in King's Landing.
Yep. Also, another character that's come to King's Landing now is Qyburn, actually. He was with them as well, which is interesting. Qyburn, who was saved, I believe, I think it may have been the first episode of the season when Robb went to Harrenhal. Who would have died had Talisa not nursed him. And then obviously he repaired Jaime's arm. And now he's in King's Landing, which is interesting. And I wonder what Grand Maester Pycelle is going to think of that. Because obviously Qyburn was banished from the Citadel and had his chain taken away. And Pycelle is probably one of the people that would despise him for his witchcraft.
Concerning who he is.
He's the exact same the exact same prick he was at the start, but we didn't know that.
He's a complete cunt.
Yeah.
You said we apologize to the king for rude, insulting, unrespectable behavior.
Yeah, he's really unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Because he keeps acting as if he's so pathetic and weak.
Yeah.
Yet he's such a twat of a person.
Speaking of, now that you've said that, you've reminded me of something that I was meant to mention at some point. I wasn't sure which episode it came from, but I know it's from Season 3. So, remember when we were talking about Season 2, and I said that there was a deleted scene that showed Dorea killing Eirich? Well, there was a deleted scene from Season 3 as well, involving Grandmaster Pycelle. And I'm tempted to show it to you, because this scene is actually quite an interesting one. So I might actually pull it up, to be honest, because I think you should see it.
My apologies, my lord, for interrupting your time of leisure. But I only want to discuss a few matters with you privately. At the council environment is less than hospitable to the principles of good governance.
You are no longer on the council. Perhaps in the black cells you truly found your level.
Oh, my lord, you cannot mean that.
Stop. Am I the only one to see through this performance? Is it possible that so many could be so stupid for so long?
There are times when I have trouble believing it myself.
And why do you bother?
So many flowers, my lord. And one by one, sooner or later, they all get plucked. I don't want to be the tallest or the brightest. I only want to remain in the garden until my time comes to return to the dirt.
But I still don't see why I should let you back on my council.
The king's council, my lord.
I could have you return to the dirt this afternoon, if you like.
Since the time I convinced the mad king to open his gates to you, I have served the interests of the House of Lannister unfailingly.
What have I done to earn this touching loyalty?
You have built the strongest house. By that time, I will be rotting beneath the floor of the Sept of Baelor, if you deem my years of service worthy of that honor.
Well, in the future, you will serve me more actively, as befits a man of your vigor.
Yes, my lord.
Take those to the kitchen. I'll have them for supper.
Yes, my lord.
Yeah, the way he just drops the act is really good. That was good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I can see why they got rid of it, but it's quite a cool scene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. It's very obviously ADR, though. They haven't edited it very well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But yes, I thought that scene was very interesting. I can't remember when it was meant to be. I think it was earlier in the season. But yes, Pycelle is an interesting character. As is Joffrey Baratheon, who is very happy about Rob's death.
Yeah, he's so giddy about it.
Yep.
Like a little schoolgirl. Then got really antsy and tired and had to go to bed.
I'm not tired.
And I'm not listening.
I am the king.
Any man who says he's the king is no true king.
That's a great line. I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Joffrey was very excited. And Tyrion basically said, you know, Sansa's not yours to torment anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very high tension. Oh, and then when Tyrion said, you know, at the moment kings are dropping like flies.
Yeah.
I could have your tongue cut for that.
And I remember how he said, I want to have Robb Stark's head given to Sansa at my wedding feast. And Cersei says, oh, it's just a joke. And he says, no, I'm not joking. I want to have it at my wedding feast. Yeah, Joffrey is out of control. But there is still one more scene to discuss in King's Landing. Probably my favourite scene from the whole episode. And that is the scene between Tyrion and Tywin Lannister. When Tyrion challenges him about, is it really that hard to do things for the family when it's in your own interest? And then Tywin says, the day you were born, I wanted to drag you into the sea and let the waves wash over you and let you die. But I didn't, because you're a Lannister. I feel like this scene and the one that we got in the first episode of Season 3, it really cements what Tyrion and Tywin's relationship is. The fact that Tywin despises his son, but kept him alive because of his family name. I think you could definitely say I think Charles Dance is probably the most consistent actor on the whole show, because every single scene he's in is nailed exactly on the head of what it needs to be.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Especially loved his dialogue with Joffrey. That was great.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think that little bit between him and Joffrey was actually right.
Yep. Tywin has been just a brilliant character this whole season. And now that we know that he orchestrated the Red Wedding, it puts a lot of things in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He literally is doing all of this just to promote his own family name. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great, Tywin.
Yep, he is.
Well, then we move on to the Night Fort. With Bran, Jojen, Mira, Hodor, and we also had a brief appearance there from Samwell Tarly and Gilly.
Yes, we actually had characters who have actually been quite well established for a while now. Actually, I think this is the real first time this has happened. Like, two stories completely separate in a way have sort of merged together.
It kind of satisfies the thing we had with the previous episode of stories getting close but not crossing over.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I enjoyed the little scenes there.
I think it's evidently clear that Bran is fully devoted to the Three-Eyed Raven now.
Yeah, he feels like he has to do it, not that he wants to do it. It feels like he has no choice but to do it.
And now that Sam basically has confirmation of the Army of the Dead, Bran has even more motivation now, because, you know, if he stays there, he'll get killed anyway.
Yeah. That's what really this episode really felt like as well. It felt like it slowly now transitioned to the real threat of the show. Because now Stannis is aware of it, and they know they need to prepare for that. And now Bran is on his quest in ordering to stopping the White Walker from invading. So it feels like this is, like, for me, like the start of the White Walker story properly, because I think these first 3 seasons has ripped them in every so often to just show off the threat of them. Now I think next season, I'd hope, next season is going to be the official start of this story.
You know. But yeah, I funnily enough, one of my favorite parts of that whole thing was Hodor. Like, he found that well, and he went, Hodor. And then Sam says he heard all about Hodor, and Hodor was very happy about that.
Yeah. It pleased him.
There was another thing that Samwell, Tarly, and Gilly did, though. They went back to Castle Black, and they found Maester Aemon, who thought that Sam had fathered a child, but he didn't. But then, of course, Sam revealed to him that she was one of Craster's wives, and he took her because he saw the army of the dead, the White Walkers. And Maester Aemon prepared 44 ravens to be sent all around the world to warn them of
because the world needs to know
danger.
that these fucking White Walkers exist. They are back.
Yes. But Samwell was not the only person to return to Castle Black, because so did Jon Snow after a scene with Ygritte.
Oh boy.
I thought that scene was probably one of the best acted from Kit Harington.
I agree.
I love how she says, because she always says, nothing, Jon Snow. And then how he says, I know some things.
I definitely feel like that if... I can see how, in terms of an acting perspective, how that scene could go wrong, but I think Kit Harington does a good job with that scene. I could very much see that going wrong, but I think what they did and how they executed it was very well done. I have no idea. I legitimately have no idea if Ygritte shows up again. If she didn't, I think that'd be their end of their story. If it was, I'm more than happy for her to come back and continue the story. But if she didn't, I feel like that would be like a really decent ending of their story. Because as much as they love each other, Jon isn't a wildling, and he never will be, because that's not who he is.
What I love about that scene is that it's been built up how strong Ygritte is with a bow and arrow, and you could genuinely believe that if she had wanted to kill him, she would have done it, but she didn't want to.
Yeah, what she wanted is to make Jon hurt like she did in terms of her emotional state, and inflict actual pain onto Jon.
Yeah.
Because she feels betrayed, especially when she first of all loves Jon and didn't want him to betray her and said so. So it's an emotional scene for these two characters, and I think both actors do bloody good job of it.
Yeah, I thought they were great. They have very good chemistry, those two. Which is no wonder why they ended up marrying in real life.
Yeah, no surprise at all.
But of course, Jon returns to the Wall and is greeted by Pip, who I don't think we've even seen since season 1.
Was he not in season 2 a bit?
I don't think he went beyond the Wall. I'm pretty sure he stayed.
Oh, he might.
Pretty sure it was Gren, Edison, and Rast that went beyond the Wall, not Pip.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, he probably stayed. He's been there for over a year now.
But think about that. Jon has been away from the Wall since season 1, episode 10. So he's been away for 2 seasons.
Yeah, like I said, we haven't seen it since the end of season 1. It feels like forever since we've been at Castle Black.
And what's going to be interesting going forward is now Jon Snow is at the Wall. Mormont isn't there anymore because he's dead. And he's now going to have to deal with Alliser Thorne without Mormont there. Because Mormont... and
because we haven't seen him in ages either.
Because if we remember the first time he went to Castle Black in season 1, Jon Snow was very protected. Because he was protected, obviously, by Mormont being the Lord Commander, and he was protected by Benjen, his uncle, being there as well. But now Mormont's dead and Benjen's missing. Presumed dead. What's going to be protecting him from Alliser Thorne?
Especially when he turns up in wildling clothing.
Yes.
Kind of linked to that.
Yes. There's also going to be someone else that's going to be at Castle Black, if you remember. Someone that was sent there quite a while ago. Do you remember who I'm talking about?
I could be wrong, but was it Littlefinger?
No.
Okay.
No. Littlefinger left on his boat to go to the Vale, to the Eirich.
Right.
Do you remember? But someone was sent to the wall. Do you remember who?
No.
Okay. I suppose you have to wait and find out then.
I guess I will.
Yep. Alright then. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about anyone from the Wall storyline. Which means then we can move on to the Dreadfort with Theon Greyjoy, who is now also known as Reek, and Ramsay Snow, who was eating a sausage.
For some reason, that scene actually got me pretty hungry.
The first time I saw that, I thought, like, is that actually his penis cooked?
At first, I thought, but then I'm like, no, it's probably a sausage.
Well, we found out in the next scene that it wasn't. Well, I don't know if it was the next scene, but it was one of the next scenes.
Didn't he say it was a pork sausage?
Yeah, he said, but then we got 100% confirmation after that.
Oh.
Although, what if Ramsay was so fucked up that he actually ate Theon's penis and put a pork sausage in the box?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a pork sausage. He was doing it to taunt him. There's that famous meme of him shaking the sausage.
I think I've probably seen that somewhere.
But yeah, Theon wants to die. He's basically suicidal at this point because he's lost everything.
Yeah.
Kill me! And now Ramsay has decided that his name is no longer Theon, it's going to be Reek.
Yeah, adding insult to injury.
Now, interesting bit of trivia about the books. The storyline around Reek is actually very different in the books, weirdly, the way it's formulated, and the way that Ramsay's character is introduced as well is a lot different in the books. However, but they had to change it because it involved visual deception. The same thing with, Barristan Selmy being in disguise in the books for a while. So for a bit of context, after Winterfell, so the Winterfell storyline takes place a bit. It kind of turns out a bit differently in the books, but the point still stands that Theon was captured from Winterfell at some point, and we don't see or hear of him after A Clash of Kings, which is when season 2 takes place, until the book called A Dance with Dragons, which is the most recent one. So he didn't appear at all in book 3 or 4. He was just missing, completely missing. But then in A Storm of Swords, I believe, there was a soldier, a Bolton soldier called Reek. And then there was also Ramsay Snow, who was mentioned by Roose Bolton, right? Ramsay's his bastard. And what happened was in a battle, I believe, with Robb's men or something like that, it was rumored that Ramsay died, but it was actually, the truth is that Ramsay swapped places with Reek, so the soldier called Reek. So what happened was that Ramsay basically pretended to be Reek and faked his own death. So the soldier that was actually called Reek died. And then so that happened, so then he was in disguise with that name. And then you get to A Dance with Dragons, and you read into the book, and you find a chapter called Reek. and it's a bit confusing. Because it's like, well, firstly, Reek died on the battlefield, and like, he's dead, so why are we reading it from Reek's point of view if he's dead? But then it's revealed in that chapter, I think, unless it happens slightly before that, but it is revealed that Ramsay was using that name because he swapped places with Reek, and Reek died on the battlefield, Ramsay lived and used Reek's name. But then it's revealed that Ramsay actually had Theon captured all this time, and he gave the name Reek to Theon. So when you read the point of view chapter Reek for the first time, people were speculating that it was actually they were thinking it was the dead soldier, or it was from Ramsay's point of view. But then it wasn't revealed that it wasn't Ramsay and it wasn't the dead soldier, because the soldier was dead. It was the fact that Ramsay had actually given that name to Theon, who he had been captured and flayed and basically skinned alive. So everything that happens in the TV show happens off screen in the books, if you know what I mean. But the thing is, the deception of Ramsay swapping places with a soldier wouldn't have worked for the TV show because you would be able to see him. So what they decided to do instead was, instead of showing that storyline, they showed us what actually happened behind the scenes. They actually showed us Ramsay torturing Theon as it happened behind the scenes. So what I really like about it is that in this season, we see the alternate point of view in Ramsay's storyline, which is quite cool. It's a really unique way of adapting to a TV show, is showing the reverse side.
Yeah. That's interesting for sure.
Yeah, so instead we've now gotten to see what happened to Theon after he was captured, and we've gotten material that wasn't in the books, because of obviously reasons for adaptation. But having said that, I think Ramsay and Theon's scenes throughout this whole season, the way they've been threaded through, I think have been really good. Firstly, for Theon's character, him realizing what he did. Obviously, he had that scene where he acknowledged that Ned Stark was his true father. And then, of course, Ramsay, I mean, he is very... You could argue he's a bit over the top, but I think it makes sense why he enjoys torturing, because he's been brought up in the Bolton household. And to... You can see that a bit like Joffrey, because it's all he knows is flaying men and torturing. It's something he enjoys very much. Whereas with Roose Bolton, his father does it because it's what his family does, and he does it because it's sort of his business. Whereas with Ramsay, it's like fun and games. And like I said before, Ramsay has every right to do this because everyone in the north hates Theon, so they don't care what happens to him. But yeah, what did you think of that scene with Ramsay and Theon? Or Reek?
I thought it was probably what I expected to round off their story for this season. I think Theon has pretty much hit as low as he could possibly get, where he pretty much wants to die because he has nothing. Yeah, the story's been like, it's very much been like the sort of side story of this entire season, yet it's so brutal.
It makes for a good aftermath to what happened in Season 2, I think, with Theon.
Yeah, I agree.
What this is for Theon, I feel like Season 3 is very much a transition between what we got with him in Season 2 to what he now has become, which is Reek. Yeah. We also got a follow-up scene to this in the Iron Islands with Balon Greyjoy and Yara. Balon obviously very clearly does not care, but Yara wants to rescue him.
Yeah, that seems interesting. Because his father's just pretty much done with him. Because I think that was probably, in his mind, the final straw.
It was interesting though how
doesn't care.
the whole season we didn't see any of the Iron Islands or Castle Black, and then we saw them in this episode, right at the end. So we have to wait and see what happens when Yara attempts to rescue Theon from Ramsay. Which won't be easy, when you consider that Roose Bolton is now Warden of the North.
No.
We still have 2 more storylines to go, because obviously this was a 1-hour episode, and it was fucking filled to the brim.
It was.
So the first one we have is at Dragonstone. We have Davos Seaworth, who was in prison with Gendry. I liked their little conversation about how they both grew up in Flea Bottom. That was cool.
Yeah.
And Davos knew the plan was that Stannis was going to burn him as a sacrifice. So what he did was he ended up going out of his way to free Gendry on a rowing boat. How did you feel about that?
I'm not sure. It seems like
there is a bit of a problem with it for me, but go on. What were we going to say?
For me, it felt like obviously he got caught. Which, yeah, we know obviously he got caught because of course he would. But I find it really weird how easy it is to break Gendry out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's just me.
I mean, to be fair, Davos is the best smuggler in the world. There is that.
Sure.
But even so...
But when Stannis says that he is going to execute Gendry, you would expect to have a guard on him at all times.
Mm-hmm.
It's odd, for sure. Because I feel like that would be really hard to break him out.
Mm-hmm. Now we come to the issue. So I've been saying ever since Gendry was taken by the Red Woman that this storyline obviously has one big difference in the books. Not in terms of the plot, but in terms of the character. Because obviously in the books it wasn't Gendry who was taken, it was Eirich Storm, who was a completely different character. Mm-hmm. And this is where we get to the part where the difference in Stannis' character arc kind of hits a brick wall. Because in the book, Stannis Baratheon was not a believer in the Lord of Light before the Battle of Blackwater at all. He was very much leaning towards Davos and was mildly tempted by the Red Woman, but didn't feel strongly towards her. He only was willing to give her power a try, and took a lot of convincing for him to kill his brother, unlike in the show. And after losing the battle, then transitions into being tempted more by her, and is battling a moral ambiguity between should he or should he not trust her, which isn't what happens in the show. He's been with her the whole time. And the thing is, the whole point of his character arc in the books is that at the end of, or near the end of this point, which is sort of halfway through A Storm of Swords, I believe, or maybe slightly more towards the end, his turn to dissension happens at this point, because then he goes and burns Eirich Storm alive for a sacrifice, which is his first sort of big mark of him turning towards what the Red Woman wants. But the problem is Dave and Dan didn't want to kill off Gendry the way that Eirich Storm died, so they had to find a way for him to get out. And they decided to have Davos smuggle him out of the castle and have him row.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in doing that, they then have to find a justifiable reason why Stannis wouldn't want to kill him, or execute Davos Seaworth for freeing an very valuable prisoner. But then Davos obviously uses the reason of, you won't because you need me for, the White Walkers, which I'm very iffy on that reasoning. It's very much seems like Dave and Dan were scrambling to find a reason for this to all work, and it feels like they're kind of stitching it together. Because, as I've said, this is something they've had to fabricate themselves, purely because, firstly, they wanted to change Stannis' character into one that was already devoted to the Lord of Light from the beginning, and also they didn't want to kill off Gendry, they wanted to keep him alive. Which is kind of fucked with the story a bit.
It kind of has.
Funny thing is, even in saying that, every other element of Dragonstone I really liked. The scene with Shireen the scene with Shireen when Davos is reading the letters. Obviously, there's that big meme when he tries to say night and he says nigget, but then when he realizes what it actually means, rather than just reading it, Stannis finding out about the Army of the Dead and changing perspective. That's all great. It's just that detail of it is a problem. And you would expect that Stannis would do everything in his power to get Gendry back now. I don't know, I just found that whole thing a bit weird, how Davos managed to convince Stannis out of executing him because of the letter. It's like, wouldn't Stannis not trust him now?
Yeah.
That being said, there was one very good piece of one very good piece of direction though, and that was when Stannis looked out the window and you had Davos on one side and the Red Woman on the other. I really like that. So yeah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I pretty much echo all of those points. I think the Stannis story overall is very messy. It's not as well thought out as every other story. It's not as consistent, but there are decent elements to the story. And there's a lot of different things that I do like.
Yeah, I agree, but it's just as an overall structure, it doesn't quite fit together. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that they've changed his character, so he doesn't really have an arc. He becomes a bit more static, which he's still interesting, but it's just annoys me because it's like, why did you have to change him?
The Stannis storyline has been pretty much in limbo for a whole season now.
Yeah.
It hasn't felt like it's developed in any way, other than probably small character moments.
Which is really annoying, because in the book, Stannis Baratheon is one of the most popular characters. He's like genuinely S tier, because he has such an interesting story and his character arc is so interesting.
Yeah, I think the only character that really actually like evolved in Dragonstone was Sir Davos. Because literally he learned how to read, sort of, and is sort of reflecting upon everything that happened to him.
Yeah.
At the war at Winterfell, and losing a son.
Also, I just realized something. I didn't notice this before. Stannis' wife in this season only appears in one scene. In Kiss by Fire. Yeah. I didn't realize that at first. That's pretty crazy. That's how how underused this storyline is. It's so scattered. It just feels like when they were doing season 2, they decided to accelerate his storyline in terms of his character development to make season 2 more impactful on screen. But in the long run, it's done some damage because now Stannis doesn't really have anywhere to go with his character. Because he's already at the spot that he was meant to be developing towards getting to.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a mess, isn't it? It's a shame as well because, boy, so much potential, you know? Like, Stannis Baratheon, when you think about him, his character on paper, his backstory, everything, he has the potential to be like the best character in the story. But he just isn't because of how the show underutilizes him. And how his storyline is a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
A damn shame.
null and void for an entire season. But it feels like
Yeah,
that.
I just get this funny feeling that the showrunners don't really care about him.
They don't care, nor they know what to do with him for a season before the whole world can catch up to what they want the whole story to go. So they're like, oh, what do we actually do with him for a season, because we can't develop him any further until we get to this point where the rest of the world is at in terms of their stories. So he's stuck as he was after the battle of Black.
Yeah,
and he is pretty much the same for the entire season. He doesn't change at any point. So any scene with him feels kind of pointless.
Well, interestingly though, he's been darting between different emotions, which is really weird. Because if you remember in Walk of Punishment, he was kind of a pervert. Then you get Kissed by Fire, where he's a sympathetic father.
Never comes up again.
Yeah. It's just, it's difficult.
It feels like different characters for that season.
It's all these different things that could make up a complex character, but they don't fit together.
There's no links between each of them. When you do a character that's unhinged and goes through different states, you need to have scenes that connect the dots between them. Otherwise, then you have an inconsistent character.
Bloody shame.
That's why something like Jodie's Doctor feels so inconsistent, because these scenes contradict what she says in other scenes.
The thing is,
no
like,
links between them.
A lot of the scenes in Stannis' storyline, he's not even in them. Like, you think about when the Red Woman goes to get Gendry, like, he's not even there for that. Whereas in the books, that never happens. So Edric Storm was in the area, which meant that Stannis, if they had told a story of Edric Storm being taken from the area, the Red Woman wouldn't have had to travel that far. Therefore, Stannis Baratheon would have had much more screen time. Because the Red Woman had to travel all the way to where the Brothers Without Banners were, near the twins. And then also you had scenes with Davos in prison and Davos reading. It just seems like Stannis' screen time got massively cut. Not to mention his wife, who only had one scene. And when you think about the context of the world, if Stannis had won the Battle of Blackwater, she would have been the queen of Westeros. Yet she only has one scene. The only thing we have left is in Yunkai with Daenerys. And the slavers.
Yeah. Another iconic scene in the way it was presented. I honestly prefer this scene to the scene where she decimates everybody to free her army.
In Astapor?
Yeah.
Because the one in Astapor was meant to have moral ambiguity but didn't. This one wasn't meant to have moral ambiguity. It was meant to be uplifting, and it was.
Yeah, I think this scene is a bit more clear in what its purpose is in terms of the narrative.
You know what's funny? I'm pretty sure Jake hates that scene because it's too uplifting. He hates it because it's too happy.
Well, the reason why is that it's literally because these last two episodes have decimated all the characters that we actually love because they're good people and they are right from what they established as their characters. All of the villain characters are now in control. That is the scene that shows off where the hope lies. Where is the hope within this whole story?
Yeah,
that's what the point of that scene is.
Yeah,
I get that some people don't like how happy some things are, but that's not the point of the scene.
It's just like Everybody Lives. It's the same thing. He just doesn't like it when there's a happy ending.
It's not meant to be a happy ending in terms of, oh, it's nice. It's meant to be a character moment that defines who that person is. And with Chris in that story, that is the moment where he starts to forgive himself in some way. The Doctor at that point starts to crack open.
I feel like
the
that scene in the Doctor Dances is the first time we see like the 10th Doctor, if you know what I mean, like start to come through of what he would become.
agree.
You know.
Yeah, I disagree massively with Jake when he says that the ending is like way too happy, because sure it is happy and that is the point, but it's more than just being happy. It's like this scene as well at the end of this episode. There is a purpose with it to show off the change of narrative within this whole story, the overarching story of the show. She is the hope of Westeros. That is what this scene is meant to represent. I don't think it's that hard to decipher.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why I prefer it to the scene in Astapor. Like, I think this is way better to define who and character and what her story is. She is the mother of the people. I don't think I can sum it up any better than that.
Yep. Pretty much. That
I think, yeah,
does well.
Like I said, I think that's the scene where I'm actually now on board with the character. Because I think that scene represents what she is fighting for. There's so many implications with that scene. It's not just to be happy. You can go so much more in depth with that, and with Everybody Lives.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if some scenes may be uplifting, but there's something deeper within it, within the writing and the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Drop the mic.
Yep. Absolutely. So, in terms of the plot, like we said, that tended to be the overall sort of theme of the episode, in the sense that
and it was well written.
Tyrants are in power, and she's the guiding light.
Yeah, that's the theme of the episode. It's very well implemented. The writing complementing it massively.
I like that the
That's how
episode
you do an
begins with
uplifting
the
theme.
episode begins with the red wedding and ends with that.
Yeah, that's totally done on purpose. That's the point. It's because of the last episode and the beginning of this episode, it ends off with that to show, guys, there is hope. She is the hope of this world. And it's brilliantly done. It's probably one of my favourite scenes with Daenerys.
Yep. All right. Do you want to move on to the historical and reception?
Yeah.
Right. Mhysa received generally positive reviews from television critics. I don't think we've actually had any episode so far say it wasn't positively received, at the very least.
No. We've had a couple episodes that some people were a bit iffy on, but overall it's been pretty much positive the whole way through.
Some of them addressing the finale's anticlimactic closure of the third season and establishing new storylines for the fourth. Rotten Tomatoes website wraps up. The consensus reads, Mhysa wraps up several of Season 3's lingering storylines, which subtly is setting the table for Season 4. Posnowick of Time wrote in his review, the end of Season 3 then spent some time among the winners and losers in the post-Red Wedding restauros, giving the audience a chance to soak in the shock, seethe in the winners' glee, and a reminder of the larger forces, White Walkers, dragons, well beyond the war between the Lannisters and the Starks. The Red Wedding seemed to kill hope. Mhysa made it clear that it didn't end anything, and it weaved together the many, many threads of Game of Thrones tapestry by returning to the recurring theme that the Game of Thrones is ultimately about family. It's about family. Because you're a
My
Lannister.
family.
Matt Farrell of IGN described
Because
that
you're a Palpatine.
Matt Farrell of IGN described that the finale had nicely set up a lot of cool stuff for Season 4, but it was also lacking some of the power and majesty of the previous finales. Especially the ending with Daenerys, who herself had a better ending back, and well, there we go. Now we're getting the opposite opinion.
I don't agree with that.
Talking about and now his watch has ended when her dragons torched Astapor and she left with a full army. He also praised the scene where Arya killed a Frey soldier. Well, it seems like people are disagreeing with you.
Are they criticizing that scene?
We'll have to wait and find out if they are.
Yeah, that's honestly that's probably the most I've disagreed with, like the reception.
I mean, I'm slightly critical of the now his watch has ended scene because of the way it's presented. The fact that there isn't any moral ambiguity to it is weird. Drusilla Morehouse remarked that after last week's shocking massacre, most fans braced for more tragic deaths in Season 3's finale and said the blow was softened, with poignant returns and surprising saves, setting the stage for an explosive 4th season. Terry Schwartz wrote that nothing can ever quite redeem the deaths of Robb and Catelyn Stark, but at least larger forces are taking shape and that are propelling the series into Season 4. Daenerys is as powerful as she's ever been. Jon Snow returns to the war while Bran heads to north of it, and the Greyjoys ready an assault to finally save Theon from his captor. Then there's the fact that Stannis decides to sail north to the Wall and to aid the Night's Watch in their fight against the White Walkers, which seems like it's going to end up being the greater global conflict in the future of Game of Thrones. David Sims I gave it a high rating, Emily Vanderworth gave it a similar one. Sims, writing for audiences who have not read the novels, described the episode as lacking a lot of serious plot movement or major twists, and may have fans gnashing their teeth a little bit as they wait 9 months for Season 4. The previous season finales have also had that quality, but they each ended on a barnstorming note. Mhysa not quite so much. Vanderworth, writing for audiences who have read the novels, wrote that on a plot level not a lot happens in Mhysa, but praised the episode for addressing the series' value of one human life is in the face of a kingdom. He also criticised the series' template of when something terrible happens in Westeros, Dany offers a glimmer of hope over her in her storyline, referring it to as an Achilles heel. So there's a criticism. Kevin Fitzpatrick of Screen Crush wrote, all in all, the air or blood of the season had mostly been let out by the reigns of Castamere, as even a returning Jaime's most interesting moments arrived much earlier in the season, but Mhysa gave us a good course heading for Season 4 with some much needed catharsis along the way. The episode's final scene, in which Daenerys, the blondest possible savior figure, appears with uncharacterized brown people as being lifted up as their messiah and praising her for saving them from bondage, was criticized by at least 4 commentators as having a colonialist or even a racist undertones. They asked why the series chose to portray the Yunkish as a nearly uniformly dark-skinned rather than ethnically diverse as in the source novels, which George R. R. Martin replied that this was because the scene was shot in Morocco with local extras. Commentators also criticized more broadly that the series' inclusion of people of color was limited to only a small number of characters.
Okay.
I think Martin's explanation of how they were shooting in Morocco and they had to use extras makes sense, because the book never actually specifies their color at all.
Funny that. Sounds like people are making excuses.
Well, yeah, I think people just see the face value of it, that a white person has come to save the brown people, and they don't like it.
Oh no, not the white people.
Yeah. It's funny, Jake, I remember on our Season 8 review, we did like a ranking of the seasons. I remember he was talking about, he's like, oh, The Reigns of Castamere is the best episode ever, and then he said, because he was looking through IMDb, looking at all the episodes to remind himself of what was in them. And I remember he said he didn't like this one. He didn't like Mhysa, which is interesting.
That's interesting because of how well written, for the most part, this episode is. Like, I think the only weak point is Stannis Baratheon's story. Other than that, I think everything else is actually very great in terms of writing.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think Jake's not a big fan of filler.
This didn't feel like filler at all. I don't think this was filler.
But to him, it probably was.
Well, okay, even with the standard story, it's establishing that they know now the real threat. So I wouldn't really consider that, for example, as filler.
And then, of course, he doesn't like happy endings. So there you go.
Doesn't like endings.
I mean, it's quite possible that maybe he saw the Red Wedding and thought, "Oh, I want more of that."
Possibly, yeah.
He didn't get it.
But then you need to remember, this is a story that is trying to be told, and that's the narrative that I feel is actually quite important to show off with the show is going.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we got another like Red Wedding situation, it'd feel like it's trying too hard to be like very impactful. You need to do that sparingly to make it, in terms of like importance, a bigger event. I do not feel like that you're just reusing the same idea over and over.
I'll be interested to see if he hopefully if he comes back. I'll be interested to see his reaction to Last of the Time Lords.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially the ending. Because you could argue like the doctor's kind of in a sort of similar way with Daenerys. There's a similarity in sort of the people banding together around him, like a sort of a figure they look up to. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what he thinks of that. I'm not really sure.
I do. The only problem I have with that is literally just the Space Jesus visual representation of that. I don't have a problem with people believing in this like larger than life story of a man called the Doctor. Like, I find that perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I know that annoys some people, but like, let's be honest, if you were to tell a group of people with no hope left that a man over 900 years old travels in time and space, say civilizations, I think they would probably see him as like a hero.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the Doctor wanting to be seen as that. Because that's how Martha sees him.
Mm-hmm.
And she's
the complicated feelings, the fact that she has to spend a year telling the stories about him because she knows that he is that. The fact that he is capable of saving them despite the fact that he neglects her is such an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
That people seem to fucking forget and not realise.
No, it's not real.
Because the Doctor's being a dick. It's out of character.
You saw that video that I sent you the other day?
Which one?
The one we have in our Discord chat. Of the YouTube video talking about the 13th Doctor.
I haven't seen
they
that
bring
yet,
up They bring up a really good point of saying how Ten is an egotistical character, but that doesn't make him bad. That makes him nuanced and like a very complex character,
mm-hmm.
especially with the Time Lord victorious aspect of his character.
Yeah.
Just because the 10th Doctor is egotistical does not make him a bad character, because other Doctors weren't, to an extent. Not just a level of Tennant.
See, the difference is, like, the first Doctor was very egotistical, as was the 6th Doctor,
mm-hmm.
and to an extent, a few of the others. Pertwee was very aristocratic. Tom Baker was quite pronounced. The 7th Doctor was manipulative. Yeah.
What people don't like about Tennant is that he's vain.
Yeah.
But that's his character. It's a well-written character and is well implemented in stories. Because yes, he is vain in some ways. Yes, he is very egotistical. That plays into the Time Lord victorious story,
mm-hmm.
Waters of Mars, because of what comes. It is a whole story. It's not inconsistencies, because the Doctor can change with those kind of aspects of the overall character. How vain could he be? How selfless could he be? It's to think that the Doctor... We're going into a whole Doctor tangent right now, but my point is to say that the Doctor should be just slightly different but the same sort of like morals overall, I think it's quite silly because you're limiting the character.
You're going to make a character static for 56 years or however long it's been. 57 years?
Yeah. Yeah, like I could totally believe that 3rd and 10th Doctor, they could probably make... You could probably give them a decision and one might go one way and one might go the other. But I wouldn't call that an inconsistency because of how the context of those characters.
I think the thing that blew me away the most was when I was on that panel, and because I expect people to not like the direction taken, but what I didn't expect was people like Joey and Jacob to say that he doesn't actually have a character. That really surprised me.
He absolutely does. He absolutely does. I can pinpoint every moment where his relationship with Martha changes.
Yeah, the fact that they said that he was as bland as Peter Davison without the character arc, I was like, what? Where are you getting that from? In what way is he as bland as Peter Davison without the character arc? That's just ridiculous.
It is. It absolutely is.
I mean,
this is why
maybe in some of I could see that argument possibly in some of the filler episodes of series 2, possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
But apart from that, no, I disagree very
Not series 3
vehemently.
and 4, not series 3 and 4. Those two are very well mixed together.
Especially series 3. Jesus, every single episode of series 3, except for probably Blink, he was a very emotionally complex character, and if you don't see it, then I don't know how to help you. Don't know how to help you.
Yeah, when we literally spell out the entire story for you, and you choose to ignore it and say that's not what happens, it's very confusing, but all right.
Yep.
And it's just like with what I was talking about with the Daenerys scene. And like the example you said with Jake, where he felt it was just too happy and uplifting. Thing is, it was happy and uplifting with a purpose within the narrative.
Yep.
It always annoys me when people purposely... He might not purposely be ignoring it, but when they just miss the point of the scene itself. What is the point of this scene within this narrative?
Mm.
It's just annoying.
When Daniel saw that scene, he thought it was an ad for charity. Save the starving people. God, fucking love Daniel.
Only you could prevent dragon fires.
Oh dear. Jeez. God, I think this might be Daniel's favorite episode of the show, because it has that and it has the Davos reading scene as well.
Oh god.
Oh dear. Anyway, this episode was written and adapted by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Again, like, the only criticism I have of them is the way they've handled Stannis Baratheon's storyline. That's been a mess. Other than that, there's some of the writing in terms of the dialogue that feels very face value and quite surface level. However, overall, they're still sticking very much to the source material as it seems. Still, there's differences, but in terms of the characters themselves, most of them seem to be fairly intact. And the one character they always seem to get right is Tywin. They always find a way to consistently maintain Tywin's character, which is great. So I thought they did a really good job. It's just I wish they didn't fuck Stannis, because that just annoys me. the fact that they would throw that character out away from being what potential it could be. Because, you know, probably in their mind he's not as important to the plot in Season 3, but that's not the point. The point is not necessarily the plot, it's to do with the character. But they just kind of forgot. But yeah, what did you think of Dave and Dan's work on this with the writing?
I felt, apart from the Stannis scenes, I felt it was very well adapted. Well, it was really well adapted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like as I think I enjoyed every scene. Apart from a couple of the Stannis. Other than that, I thought I enjoyed the whole thing. The whole way.
Mm-hmm. I'll say it was
engaged.
quite a calm down. It was quite a... In terms of the tension, it was, aside from the very beginning, it was quite a mild episode, but that was kind of the purpose of it.
I think it complemented it very well.
I think it was smart to start it with the Red Wedding because it felt a bit like the start of Fire and Blood, because you remember how the start of Fire and Blood began with Ned's beheading, like the aftermath of that. I like the way that they did that again here with the Red Wedding being the start of this episode. Yes. The episode was also directed again by David Nutter, who also did the previous episode. So what did you think of the direction overall?
I thought it was pretty darn good.
Again, like, David Nutter seems to have the talent for making very good final shots, doesn't he? Because last time we had that one with Catelyn, and then this time we had the Daenerys one.
Yeah. Very good stuff.
Very good. Trying to think of individual shots I quite liked. I liked the one with Hodor going over the well. That was cool. I also liked the shot of when they were walking through the tunnel to go beyond the wall. I really liked that.
Yeah, I agree.
And also I thought the direction in the scene with Jon and Ygritte was very good. And the best shot of the whole episode, though, is the one with Stannis with Davos and the Red Woman on each side. That was great. And also, the way that the scene with Davos and Gendry was directed in the prison, I really liked that too. It's weird that I'm remembering this wrong, but I remember for some reason, I remember them having more screen time together, but they didn't. They didn't have barely any at all. I don't know why I thought that. And then we also had the music by Raymond Javadi.
Yeah, the music was great for the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Anything specific you remember?
Well, obviously I think the final scene was probably like the most iconic track of the episode.
Well, considering that, I suppose we should start and listen to the first track for the episode, and that is Mhysa. And then we have Mhysa.
That reminded me a lot of something that Murray Gold would compose.
Yes, it was very Murray Gold, wasn't it?
Especially the first half. I liked that. That was very good.
Very bombastic.
Yeah.
Fitting for the scene, for sure. The other theme we're going to be listening to, though, is called Kingslayer, which is the theme of Jaime Lannister. Jeez, that legitimately gave me goosebumps.
That was really good.
Oh, that was perfect for Jaime. I loved that. The way that the violin sounds so broken, and just the way I don't know, it represents the conflict so well, in the sense that that scene to me, when I heard that song, it brought me right back to the bathtub scene, where he's talking about, the Mad King, how he's known as the Kingslayer, and because Ned Stark judged him for that. But then when you get to the second half, hearing that sort of uplifting note to it, it reminds me again of the scene in the bear pit as well. Is that I feel like this song really does represent a lot of Jaime's character and how it's developed, despite being the Kingslayer. Is a definite tragedy to his character, I feel. I definitely feel like this season he's slowly become one of the best characters in the show.
Yeah, for sure.
So you would hope that they wouldn't fuck that up, right? They wouldn't completely go against that at some point, would they?
Nah.
Jaime's far too good for that. What time is it now for?
It is time for the trivia.
As explained in the episode by the subtitles, Mhysa, meaning mother, is the Cascari loanword in Slaver's Bay Low Valyrian. Hence why Daenerys didn't know it. Though she speaks the common tongue, Dothraki, and several dialects of Valyrian, she does not understand Cascari. Tywin's reaction to Joffrey's insult during the small council scene contains non-verbal information in the books which is difficult to translate on screen. Tywin's calm, almost nonchalant response to send Joffrey to bed is not meant to be humorous, but is in fact utterly terrifying to everyone in the room except Joffrey. Everyone else present, including Tyrion, the POV narrator for this chapter, has known Tywin for years, and known that Tywin has killed men for lesser insults. They all know that on rare occasions Tywin responds to insults not by yelling but by speaking with measured and cool words, is because he is deliberately willing himself to appear calm when he in fact is suppressing homicidal anger. Moreover, as Joffrey leaves, Tywin says to himself that the boy will require a sharp lesson, which Tyrion recognizes as the exact same phrase Tywin used when he forced Tyrion to watch as his guards gang raped his first wife Tysha, because Tyrion had dared to marry a commoner. Tyrion knows that Tywin would never kill his own grandson due to the taboo associated with kinslaying. Otherwise he would have killed Tyrion simply for being a dwarf long ago, which is what we found out in the scene. But Tywin now realizes just how crazy Joffrey is and intends to bring him to heel with a horrific punishment. Tyrion doesn't think that Tywin has thought of a specific punishment just at that moment, but still his choice of words indicate that he intends for something on the scale on which he had when his guards gang raped Tyrion's wife. So there's a lot of the inner subtext missing. However, I think Charles Dance's performance shows all of that really well, which is it's a big testament to the actor. The fact that you can tell that he wants to punish Joffrey, but he's suppressing it. If you know what I mean. It's very subtle. There are several callbacks in this episode to previous events. Back in Season 1 finale Fire and Blood, when Joffrey shows Sansa her father's head on a spike, he threatened her that he intended to present her with her brother's Robb's severed head as well. This episode reveals that he fully intends to literally follow through on that promise. He did say that, if you remember. Joffrey's threat to have Tyrion's tongue cut out for threatening also calls back to Fire and Blood when Joffrey had the minstrel Marillion's tongue cut out in front of the entire courtroom. In-universe, the Frey and Bolton soldiers mock how Robb's other bannermen first proclaimed him king by repeatedly shouting the King in the North in Fire and Blood. Subsequently used shouts of the King in the North as their battle cry for independent Northern Kingdom in Garden of Bones. They mock this by sarcastically chanting King in the North, King in the North, here he comes the King in the North, as they parade his horrifically desecrated corpse around the twins on a horse. Tywin dismisses everyone at the small council meeting and in a flat "not you" to make Tyrion stay for a private conversation. This is similar to how he dismissed his war council back in Fire and Blood. So there's been a lot of callbacks to Fire and Blood in this episode. Including the ending as well, because Fire and Blood ending with Daenerys as well. In the second episode of Season 1, The King's Road, Tyrion remarked to Jon Snow that due to the social stigma of being a dwarf, his parents would probably have left him out in the woods to die as an infant if he'd been born a peasant. But unfortunately, Lord Tywin, Tyrion was born into the noble house Lannister. This episode reveals that Tywin did indeed to seriously consider killing Tyrion the day he was born, by leaving him on the beach and letting the waves sweep him away, as he only relented because Tyrion is a Lannister. More loosely, Joffrey's tendency to defend any of his actions, no matter how ridiculous, by shouting "I am the king," popped up routinely in Season 2, particularly when having Sansa beaten in front of the entire court in Garden of Bones, or when foolishly starting a citywide riot in the Old Gods and the New. Tywin bluntly calls him out on this, pointing out that a man who has to remind people that he is a king is not really a king at all. Joffrey's angry declaration to Tywin that my father won the real war during Robert's rebellion has an ironic truth to it. Robert Baratheon waged most of the campaign of the rebellion and personally killed Rhaegar Targaryen at the Battle of the Trident, but he wasn't really Joffrey's biological father, as we know, but he doesn't. However, Joffrey's real biological father, Jaime Lannister, did in fact play a major role at the climax of the rebellion when he personally killed Mad King Aerys II Targaryen himself. Joffrey doesn't realize how right he is. Joffrey's accusation that Tywin hid at Castle Rock instead of joining the rebellion is a bit harsh, but has some elements of truth to it, sentiments which even Ned Stark shared. Tywin wasn't exactly hiding, but he cynically waited out most of the war, not declaring for the rebels or the Targaryens. He only sided with the rebels after the Battle of the Trident, which it was obvious the rebels were going to win anyway. Ned Stark never forgave Tywin for this and was always suspicious of the Lannisters' loyalty afterwards. Tywin's forces did deal the death blow to the Targaryens during the sack of King's Landing, though it was more of a betrayal and a slaughter than a real battle, because he tricked the Mad King into letting his army inside the gates first. Tywin wasn't cowardly so much as calculating, but even Ned Stark derided for him for playing no part in actually winning the rebellion, only joining in the later stages after it was obvious that Robert was winning. This episode finally reveals that it was actually Ramsay Snow, son of Roose Bolton, leading soldiers of House Bolton who burned Winterfell to the ground during the sack of Winterfell. This was not presented as a mystery in the books when it occurred at the end of the second novel, though it wasn't clear at the time if Ramsay did this on his own initiative or if his father Roose was actually actively planning to betray Robb Stark at the time, though it still isn't clear if Ramsay acted on Roose's orders or if Roose simply agreed with the decision after the fact. Ramsay simply wrote letters to his father and Robb earlier in Season 3 falsely blaming Theon Ironborn as responsible for the destruction of Winterfell, but even this lie wasn't clearly articulated until early Season 3. Thus, fans who read the books and Game of Thrones wiki in particular were put into a difficult position of not being able to tell TV First fans who was responsible, as this would have been spoilers, even though it wasn't a mystery in the books. So, if we remember, there was that scene with Robb and Talisa earlier in the season when Roose Bolton walked in with 2 letters.
Mm-hmm.
So it was revealed that one of those letters was from Ramsay, and he fabricated Theon and the Ironborn burning Winterfell, even though it was the Boltons that did it. So all this time I've been hyping you up for this, the Red Wedding. I've been foreshadowing all of this with Roose Bolton, and how there's been fabrications of the letters, there's been things he said, all sorts. This episode also reveals that the 20 Ironborn raiders who joined Theon in betraying the Starks and capturing Winterfell, only then to betray Theon by himself, knocking him out and handing him over to the Boltons in return to promise a safe passage, were rewarded as traitors deserve. Ramsay broke his promise and flayed each of them alive. Roose Bolton's stilted fake attempt at a smile indicates his lack of real human emotion, so yeah, there's a picture of that from the episode. So the smile he gave Walder Frey was very fake, if you could tell or not.
Mm-hmm.
Characters in the books later describe Roose Bolton as a cold, calculating psychopath who genuinely has no real emotions and seems oddly distant from normal people. The TV series matches this with it well at the end of Roose's scene with Walder Frey in the episode, which he gives a smile that comes off as oddly stilted and forced. Roose doesn't have real emotions and doesn't comprehend the mannerisms made by people who do have emotions, while Roose can time for time mimic emotional responses such as smiling. It comes off as strangely artificial. So that pretty much confirms it. Now you know that Roose Bolton is a psychopath. Roose claims that he, Robb, ignored my advice at every turn. This is incorrect. In the Season 2 episode, The Old Gods and the New, Robb intended to return to the north and fight the Ironborn invaders, but eventually accepted Roose's advice to send Ramsay instead. And that turned out to be one of the most serious mistakes Robb has ever made. Interesting. Had Robb rejected Roose's advice and immediately returned to his host to the north, many disasters would have been prevented, even it meant losing the lands he conquered and getting himself caught between the Ironborn and the Lannisters. In such a scenario, even if Robb had reached Winterfell too late, he had still had the Freys, Karstarks, and Boltons on his side, and the Red Wedding would have never occurred. And I imagine Theon wouldn't have been under as much torture. He probably just would have been executed straight away.
Yeah.
Walder Frey says he thinks the great houses are hypocritical for looking down on him for marrying teenage girls well into his 80s and 90s. But no one criticised Jon Arryn when he married that Tully bitch, Catelyn's sister Lysa Tully. Walder misses the point, however, in that while the other houses are disgusted at the massive age difference between Walder and his younger brides, this isn't the main reason they look down on him, rather that the other great houses are disgusted by Walder Frey and his entire family due to their utter shallow loyalties. How Hospitality infamously dubbed him the late Walder Frey because he intentionally marched the forces of House Frey so slowly that they wouldn't reach the Battle of the Trident until it was already over, providing them absolutely no real help during Robert's rebellion. Moreover, within the TV series, other vassals of House Tully from the Riverlands joined Robb Stark's army without question because they had sworn oaths to allegiances to the Tullys. When Catelyn pointed this out to Walder in Season 1's Baelor, he waved it off as I said some words which meant nothing to him, unlike the one sworn to Tully vassals. Walder Frey only aids Robb Stark after extorting his own overlords into promising that Robb and Arya would enter marriage alliances with House Frey. Other lords marry younger brides, but what Walder can't even comprehend is that other people take oaths seriously and are outraged when he casually breaks them. First, oaths of loyalty, but now he has revealed that even the sacred oath of guest right means absolutely nothing to him. It's just some words. The phrase even break both basic social oaths, such as not desecrating the bodies of fallen enemies, but instead gleefully mutilating Robb Stark's corpse and triumphantly parading it around the castle. So basically the Freys are cunts and cowards.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is it safe to say that Walder Frey is probably one of the very few characters in this story that's like an 100% fucking full-on black villain? Like, when I say black, I mean as in like he has no redeeming qualities. Like he's like a pitch black villain. Is that would you say that's true? Or would you say there's something to him that's redeeming? I mean, mate, I would
don't
say
think there's anything about him that's redeeming.
I would say
an actual person.
I would say now there isn't, but I would say maybe at first you could say he felt betrayed. Because he was actually genuinely betrayed by Robb.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't think so. He might be the only. Well, Ramsay is pretty unhinged.
Yes.
And he's probably the closest.
Again, like, you could make up the whole... You could add the factor of Ramsay wanting to, prove himself to his father. I think Joffrey's pretty close, but then again, like, nurture over nature. As Cersei has mentioned in this episode, he was born an innocent child and was turned into a monster by the way he was brought up. Spoiled by his mother and not given any attention by his father. Born of inbred incest into a highborn family and destined to be king. I think there's always a motivation for what people do, though. Because if you think about it with Ramsay, he's actually being ordered, or at least at first ordered by North Bannerman to do this. Like, what he's doing is actually in support of Robb, which is interesting. Even though the grand plan is to betray the Starks. It's interesting. It's hard to gauge, really. I think once you get scenes with Ramsay and his father together, it may clear the air a bit on his motivations. Would you say?
Yeah. Possibly, yeah.
The TV series has curiously not chosen to show many of the rival kings during the war wearing crowns. Joffrey and even Renly had crowns, but Robb, Stannis and Balon have never been shown with their crowns. In the novels, Stannis has a new crown made resembling the circle of metal flames around his head, in honour of the Lord of Light, while Balon wears traditional crown made out of driftwood, which kings of the Iron Islands used to wear in past centuries. The old kings in the north used to wear a crown consisting of a simple circlet of bronze, engraved with the old tongue runes of the first men, surmounted by 9 black spikes shaped like long swords. The crown was intentionally simple and only made basic metals of war, not containing gold or precious gemstones, to emphasize the grave nature of the kings in the north, in contrast with the flamboyant heraldic excesses of the Andal kingdoms to the south. The crown was taken away when the Starks bent the knee during the Targaryen conquest 3 centuries ago. But when Robb is declared new king in the north, smiths at Riverrun create a very accurate replica which he wears. In the books, when Robb Stark's corpse was mutilated by cutting off his head and sewing his direwolf Grey Wind's head in its place, the final act of desecration was when the Freys, possibly Lord Warder himself, proceeded to nail Robb's crown onto Grey Wind's head, further reinforcing the utter body horror of the moment. Robb's desecrated corpse with the crudely crowned direwolf head sewn onto remains one of the most iconic images of the novels. So how do you feel about them removing some of the crowns?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's just a small detail, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes it a bit more modern, that the crowns are kind of there for traditional stake, but the kings don't really care that much about them. If you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, they'll wear them
Yeah.
if they're sitting on the throne. Or like in like a formal situation, like Robert Baratheon wore his crown at the joust. I think it is interesting though, because when you start the show, some people get confused upon like who the king is, because Robert Baratheon doesn't wear a crown at the start.
Yeah.
A slight change in the books is that Grey Wind's head is not only sewn onto Robb's corpse, but almost securely attached by impaling it on a stake. This was apparently done to be more realistic. A direwolf's head is very heavy, and simple stitches wouldn't be enough to sustain its weight as they paraded around on horseback. Frey soldiers and Arya encounters, which are not from the scene in the book, specifically explain that when they tried to simply stitch it on the first time, the head fell off and tore a lot of the flesh away, so they had to secure it by inserting a wooden stake. By hooking the stitching around his collarbones, no mention is made that they paraded his corpse around in the books, as it was apparently stationary. The book version apparently didn't need all of the extra measures. So they sewed up a plot hole by not using sewing, they used impaling with stakes. Curiously, exactly what happened to Robb Stark's badly mutilated corpse after the Red Wedding has not been mentioned in the novel so far. It was decapitated with a direwolf's head sewn on it, but it was still physically present, and the Freys certainly didn't return it to the Tullys at Riverrun to give it a proper burial. Maybe they threw it in a garbage heap, or threw it in the river, or burned it, or maybe they propped it up to rot at the front gate of the Twins. It had never been stated. What happened to Robb's crown, however, has been revealed. It was subsequently taken by Ryman Frey, the eldest son of Lord Walder's eldest son, Stevron Frey, who died earlier in the war, leaving Ryman as Lord Walder's heir. Ryman gave Robb's crown to a prostitute whom he sarcastically crowned the Queen of Whores, and takes to having her wear Robb's crown while he has sex with her in his command tent. Eventually the crown is obtained by another character who we will discuss at some point. That's all I'm going to say. Probably not now, but there is a point where we will discuss a certain character. There is no mention in the show of what has been done to Catelyn's corpse. In the books, her corpse has been dumped naked into the Green Fork in a savage mockery of House Tully's funeral customs. Nymeria dragged the corpse out of the river, then was found by the Brotherhood. Thoros refused to revive her because too long had passed since her death. Arya killing the Frey soldiers by pretending to be cute and starving, dropping a coin and then stabbing the man who picked it up, was moved around from earlier in the books. Arya used this trick against the Bolton soldier when she escaped Harrenhal. Albeit the Boltons hadn't turned on the Starks yet. Arya's inner POV narration for the books included a joke which is lost in the TV adaptation, when she's just, "But I'm hungry," but has thinks to herself, "But not for food," she indirectly telling the soldier she's hungry for revenge right before she kills him. Arya's line emphasizing that the Frey soldier was first man she had kills is, in the episode guide, points out a reference to how the first person she killed, albeit accidentally, was a stable boy who tried to stop her from escaping from the Red Keep during the betrayal and the massacre of her father's household. That's true, because remember, she has killed before, but it wasn't a man, it was a boy. The final scene generated some negative attention from critics who perceived the colonialist undertones in having a platinum blonde, pale-skinned aristocrat liberating a society of dark-skinned slaves. Oh dear, we get into controversy now, especially... Oh dear God, it's not a good time to be having this conversation, is it? At all. Yunkai having uniformly dark-skinned slaves is technically inconsistent with the books, in which the slavers-based cities took slaves from whatever population was at hand indiscriminately. Indeed, the books make clear that the slave masters basically just enslave anyone they are able to overpower and slap chains onto. Even the passing ships from the free cities will be attacked, enslaving raids, and children sold into slavery. The books explicitly state that several of Daenerys' Unsullied are ethnically Lyzine, were characteristically blonde-haired, light-skinned, and blue-eyed. Slavery in Essos is similar to slavery in ancient Roman Greece, which was based on socio-economic more than ethnic lines. George R. Martin explained that the crowd of slaves is mostly composed of dark-skinned people as a side effect of filming the scene in Morocco, using exclusively local extras. So they would have had to spend a bit more money and fly people in from other countries to have an ethnically mixed slave group. Is essentially the realistic reason. So what do you have to say about that? Does it not being purely focused on socioeconomic and it having a racial undertone to it affect the story at all?
I have no real bother with it, I guess.
Like, it's criticized by some people for not being faithful adaptation, and it's criticized by other people by being a depiction of racial slavery on TV.
I mean, it's not. It's just not at all, because that's not what the scene is. Trying to do. That's not the point of the
They
scene.
see that scene as a white savior for the black people.
Well, they're idiots, because they're not actually seeing what the scene is actually trying to convey. That's because they don't have any evidence for that. There's no line, there's no piece of dialogue represents Daenerys' stance on
Essentially,
races.
I think people, personally, I think people just need to accept the reasoning that they didn't have the budget to have an ethnically mixed slave group. That is the reason, because they were filming in Morocco.
And even if they would be able to, I don't see, even if they did or didn't, I don't ever, if it's not in any way clear, because there's nothing to support that argument, why focus on the racial aspect of that scene? Why not
that's what people are sensitive about, obviously.
Yeah, why not focus on the actual story trying to say?
Because the racial aspect is what they can see at face value. They don't think about the subtext.
Or that's literally all they care about because they want to make an argument.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same kind of thing when people say they want representation, film and TV, just because they are a certain ethnic group, not because of the actual person itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm always really, really iffy on people arguing that, well, it's great representation for this group of people, and I'm like, regardless if this character.
So is this kind of the reverse?
Bad,
it's like it's representing them in a bad way, and that's why they don't like it.
They're free now, though. The scene literally establishes that they're free, and Daenerys is saying that these are free.
Yeah, but they've been freed by a white person.
Oh no. A white woman doing the right thing? That's unheard of.
Oh dear.
Literally frees them.
Anyway, as long as it's not crucial to the story, I don't see how it's a problem. If it was an important part of the plot that... If there was a part of the plot in the story that was meant to be adapted that... part of the complications of the storyline was that there were mixed races in slavery and it was a socioeconomic problem, then I'd be like, well, they should have adapted it more accurately, but it's not. That's not really the focus of it. it's purely just these people are slaves, and the color of their skin is a consequence of where they were filming. Like, if they weren't filming in Morocco and they were filming in Ireland, then it would all be white slaves. Anyway, moving on. Sam says the wall is 500 miles long. In the books, it is 300 miles. In behind the scenes featurette, Kit Harington explained that the way he played the line, "You won't shoot me," Jon Snow actually didn't feel certain that Ygritte loved him too much to shoot him, even if he betrayed her. Rather than he played the line, Jon trying to convince Ygritte not to shoot, essentially bargaining, but unsure of what she'd do. Interesting. Davos tells Stannis that his late son Mathos taught him to read. It is unclear why Davos lied. Maybe he feared that Stannis would be angry at Shireen for spending time with a prisoner. I think that's the reason. I actually do think that's the reason. I think, because if you remember in Kiss by Fire, Stannis said to Shireen, Sir Davos is a traitor. Like, you shouldn't be talking to him. So I think that actually makes sense as to why he lied. Because he wanted to protect Shireen, because she's not meant to be down there. And Davos, now that he is, he has such a kind heart for this girl, he wouldn't want to see her disciplined by her father. That would just be the worst thing possible. So he's lied on her behalf, which is quite nice, actually. It shows that he cares. Viewership 5.4 overnight and 6.3 overall. So it's jumped after the Red Wedding. I believe this is the highest we've had, which is no surprise. So very big ratings. We've climbed quite a lot since the start. We've gone over double what we had, I believe, from the beginning. In terms of if you compare the overall viewership to the viewership at the start of Season 1, we're hitting triple. We're between double and triple at the moment, so that's really good. So, your conclusion and rating out of 10 for Mhysa?
I pretty much loved it. I thought it was pretty much great for the entire thing. Just minor scenes with Stannis, or the Stannis storyline. I think those are pretty the weakest part of it. They are a bit confusing in terms of some things here and there, and the fact that Stannis as a character has been pretty much in limbo this entire season. But other than that, I enjoyed every scene. Thought it was very well paced as well, and I think and how the through line mixes in with. And I think the final scene of this episode is fantastic and probably one of my favourite scenes from the show. I don't know if I should, because I've really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Honestly, I think I'm going to give this actually a 10 out of 10 because I think because of how well this episode complements the last episode.
Even with the Stannis scenes, you're going to give it a 10?
Yeah, they are problems, but I think because I enjoyed how everything else was, because I loved everything else, pretty much. I would say my 10 out of 10 is pretty subjective. I think objective is probably like a 9. But, and I'm prefacing this is probably more subjective than objective. I liked and loved how it complemented the last episode in terms of how it transitioned into the final scene. So in terms of actual writing, it's not as strong as some other episodes that I would put above it. So I'm being very clear about it. Subjectively, I think this is a 10 out of 10. So it's very subjective.
Interesting. This is the end game of Game of Thrones.
Just making it clear. So don't get annoyed with people that I love this episode more than Blackwater.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I would say Blackwater as a written episode is better than this, but I just subjectively love this more because I think in terms of the themes and how it works with the writing.
Themes. I do prefer Blackwater to this episode, if I'm honest.
That's totally fine.
Mhysa's very strong. Very strong. The scene with Jon Snow was great. The scenes with Sam and Bran I really liked. A little bit surface level, but really good. The scenes with Tywin Lannister were my favourite. I loved those scenes, especially with Joffrey and Tyrion. Seeing Sansa transform from, joking around about how her and Tyrion can have a chaotic marriage to fuck everyone over, to then transitioning to her finding out the news of Robb and her mother's death. With Roose Bolton and Walder Frey opening the episode, starting off with the absolute pain of the Red Wedding to ending with Daenerys saving slaves. It's a nice transition of tone. We also had a scene with Reek and his Ramsay and his sausage, and then transitioning into the scene with... I will say, I feel like one thing I will say with this episode, even when I first watched it, that was a bit jarring, is there seems to be a lot of grandstanding in the show now. Somewhat with the Daenerys scene, however, the big one for me was the Yara scene. We're talking before about like how the hot pie scene was in Walk of Punishment was given way too much emotion. This to me felt like the Yara scene felt a bit like too heroic for her character. It didn't feel right. I would have preferred a much blunter version of that scene. Felt a little bit, I don't know why, it just felt a little bit shoehorned in sort of the way it did. Jaime's return, just the very subtlety of the eye contact between Cersei and Jaime was very good. Cersei in general was very good. Just the way she's talking about how not even Joffrey himself can take away what he was when he was a baby. The scene with Shay and Varys was interesting as well. There's been a lot of setup for season 4 here. With Arya killing that man for sticking the direwolf's head on Robb's body. Lots of moral ambiguity. I really like that scene. I love the bit with Clegane where he says, "Next time you do something like that, tell me first." You can definitely see that they're starting to connect. They're starting to become more bonded with each other in some ways, in the sense that they're both having similar motivations rather than clashing like they were before, which is interesting. And overall, the scope of the show has been drastically changed with the White Walkers. Now the news of that spreading. But unfortunately, my biggest criticism with this episode is how messy the Stannis Baratheon storyline has been, which means it's going to knock it down to a 9 out of 10 for me, because I think there's so much unfulfilled potential with that storyline that they wasted. And
I definitely agree.
Gendry's escape was a bit shit. But
oh yeah, it was.
Overall, aside from that, it was a very solid episode, and I think possibly it just might be one that I'm not as drawn to as some of the others. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about this episode that it's not that it feels wrong, but the way it's presented, there's certain things about it that are interesting choices, to say the least. But overall, I thought it was very good, so I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Because the Stannis scenes bring it down a bit, but then the Tywin scenes just fucking put it through the roof. Oh, the way the way his character is written in this show is just, it's impeccable. It's an absolute impeccable. So yeah, 9 out of 10. So that's the end of season 3.
Yeah, we've done it.
Which means that we have the season 3 recap to do after this, which we're going to be doing similar fashion to what we did with the last two. So we'll have to come up with all the different categories and the rankings and whatnot, and discuss all the characters in detail.
Yep.
And then once that's done, we will begin season 4, episode 1. Which is called Two Swords.
Ooh.
So firstly, your sort of thoughts on going into the recap, and then also your anticipation for season 4 with Two Swords.
I'm looking forward to discussing season 3 because I think this is a very, very intriguing season to talk about, because it definitely feels like it has more problems than the first two but it also has a lot of great things as well. It will be interesting to talk about the overall narrative of this season and what stuff worked really well, stuff didn't. And in terms of next season, I'm looking forward to it. I'm expecting the White Walker story to really start to take shape, and I'm expecting the sort of like Lannister story as well to sort of like forward as well, with Jaime back in King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
we also have 2 weddings to look forward to.
Yeah, we're still gonna get through those 2 weddings.
Mm-hmm. Now that Daenerys has freed Astapor and Yunkai, where is she going to go next?
Who knows?
Who knows? Yara wants to save Theon from the Boltons. Roose Bolton's the warden in the north. Tywin has control of everything. And Jon's back at Castle Black, as is Samwell Tarly, without Mormont. Thorne will be there, as will someone else that you seem to have forgotten about. I'm interested to see if it clicks in your brain who it is.
It probably will as soon as I see who it is.
Yeah, when you see him, you're going to be like, oh, right, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
Littlefinger's on his boat going to the Eirich to, what, as we understand, marry Lysa Arryn. What else is there? There's Winterfell's in a wreck. Rickon's going to the Last Hearth with Osha. Bran's going to go beyond the wall to try and get closer to the Three-Eyed Raven. Carl Tanner and Rast are at Craster's Keep with dead Georg Mormont there and dead Craster. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. The Blackfish escaped the Red Wedding. Arya and the Hound are away from the twins, so now where they're going to go? If the Hound's not going to take her back to her family to sell her, where they're going to go now? Where would be the next logical step? Jaime's back in King's Landing again. Yeah. So, and also Stannis Baratheon as well has now been alerted about the Army of the Dead. So what's his next move going to be as well?
Ooh.
And Gendry's ruin. So yeah, anything else you want to say about things you look forward to?
No, I think that's pretty much all of it.
Alright. Well, we will see you all in the Season 3 recap and rankings video. And then following that, we will see you again for Season 4, Episode 1, which is called Two Swords.